That's right.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us today. This is actually our second AI webinar. We did one sometime in the fall of last year, and this is Group Dentistry Now. This is our DSO Study Club, our webinar series, and I am Bill Neumann, and we have two panelists here with us today that are not strangers to AI. They are experts in the field. We have Ophir Tanz, and he is the CEO and founder of Pearl. So thanks for being here, Ophir.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And then we also have Amol Nirgudkar, and I got the last name right. All right, that was good. So Amol is also the CEO and founder, but of Patient Prism. So Amol, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to jump into things here and the format and some housekeeping. What we're going to do is Amol's going to talk a little bit. Ophir's going to pick things up, and then we're going to get into a panel discussion. And then we're going to make sure that we have some time. We've had some of the attendees actually provide some questions ahead of time. So some of the panel discussion will be from those questions that the attendees have provided us. And then we'll also have an open Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free during the end of the webinar, and we'll let you know when to start asking those. You can always start now and plug them in, and then hopefully we'll get to everything. But we will start things off now and make sure that Amol, again, thanks for being here, Amol, and we'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Bill and Ophir, for doing this with me. Bill, thank you, and Kim for organizing this webinar on this really cool topic that we call AI. It's kind of the new buzzword of 2020, 2021. But before we even start, I really want to express a lot of gratitude to a lot of people in our industry. Obviously, this seems to be the year of gratitude because obviously I'm extremely grateful for surviving this pandemic. Most of my family, my friends, my close friends, and our extended dental family, most of them stayed healthy, and I'm genuinely grateful for that. I'm also very grateful for being part of our industry, the DSO industry, as we call it. It's a small industry. Everybody knows each other. Everybody runs into each other all the time. And what I'm proud of and grateful for this industry is the leadership that the DSO industry exhibited throughout 2020. And that leadership was really a model for not only for dentistry, but for the entire world. You know, when things went south last March, just about a year ago, when this all came to fruition, the leaders of our industry really sprung into action. There was webinars, there's 15 webinars every day on every imaginable topic that you can imagine. We talked about teams and team morale. There was people talking about how to get more patients seen, hygiene, and all these discussions. And in the midst of the worst pandemic of a century, the DSO industry really was brimming with optimism. And I was inspired by so many leaders and so many CEOs in our industry that provided this amazing daily dose of inspiration. You know, on my side at Patient Prism, our team, Mike Spiesbach, George Bonish, Beth Gaddis, who's no longer with us, but provided incredible support. Kaya Bales, Jen Wallace, Cheyenne LaFrance, Almarie Birch, Nick Marchetta, Jillian, my core team. I'm so thankful for them to have provided me the daily motivation to be better and do better. So really thank you for that. I'm excited about 2021. Dentistry has come out stronger than ever before, yay. Some of the best business models in dentistry were crafted in the worst moments of the pandemic, in my view. And I was literally talking to 50 people a day, you know, whether it's attracting new patients, retaining existing ones, improving case acceptance, optimizing schedules, reducing no-shows, building better teams, focusing on the oral systemic link, implementing teledentistry. This and many, many more ideas in dentistry were polished and improved over the last year. And Bill and Ophir, I know I definitely have a lot more clarity around where we are today as an industry, where we are today as a company. The next slide, my favorite historian of today is Yuval Noah Harari. If you read Sapiens or 21 Lessons for 21st Century, it really is about, I think 2020 was really about clarity. and about clarity of vision of where we want to be, where we want to go from here. And truly speaking, I feel that at Patient Prism, we did a lot of that. We kind of went inwards, focused on what can we do better to introduce better models that can improve a lot of outcomes in dentistry. So next slide, Bill. We really want to talk about AI today. And what I think about AI is, and a lot of people have perceptions about, what is AI? Is it these robots running around like Terminator style? What does AI mean to me, at least, or mean to maybe Ophir as well? And I don't want to speak for him, but really it's at the end at the heart of AI today is about, how do we predict things? How do we predict things from data that's kind of unstructured? How we take the computational power of machines and really arrive at a prediction. And that's where really AI is today. That's where we stand. And what we've done at Patient Prism, and I believe what Pearl has done as well, is has taken this data, vast quantities of data, and computed that using a whole host of amazing technologies that you learn and languages to really provide us insight and foresight into our operations, our dental operations, whatever they might be, whether it's diagnosing treatment, whether it's understanding how we're acquiring patient or mapping out the journey. And that's where I feel our industry is moving towards. As we see in the next slide, what's happening throughout the world is this migration from information to action. And I call it the migration from hindsight to insight to foresight. Where do we are, right? So if we go through these, Bill, if you click through those things, is that the evolution of analytics is really, really happening. And 2020 was an accelerator, right? How do we take analytics that we've known? How do we take information that we have accumulated in our DSOs? And how do we convert that information into insight? It's okay it's great to know what happened. Okay, that's wonderful, right? That's information. But how do we take that into why did it happen, and really go deeper into that, and eventually make some decisions about, okay, if this is why it happened, then can we figure out how to change an outcome? Can we convert that into action? So the idea behind AI for us, as well as I think in computer vision, which is Pearl, is to take information that we already have. In our case, it's the telephone conversations. In Pearl's case, it's the X-rays or the imaging, and be able to translate that into really deep insight of what that means, right? What that means, and translate that into actionable intelligence, where we say, if we do this, then we could recover X amount of revenue, or if we do this, we could see our implant production double, or if we do this, we could diagnose. We could diagnose root canals more, or whatever that might be, right? So that really is the foundation of why. If Simon Sinek asked me why does AI exist in dentistry, I would say it helps in the evolution of analytics. It helps us take information, develop some insight into it, make a decision, and develop an action plan that not only helps us make more money, but also drives the health of patients all over the place. So I'll go over this stuff in the Q&A sessions on how we exactly do that, but I'll hand this over to Ophir, and he can talk about really cool stuff, what they're doing.
Cool. Thanks, Amol. Appreciate that introduction, and thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Ophir Tanz. I'm the CEO and founder of Pearl. We're focused on AI, specifically computer vision, in the sort of dental category. I have an engineering background. My father is a retired dentist. I've spent the last 15 years building AI-driven companies. The last company that I built, called GumGum, grew to be quite large. Therefore, we sort of know, I think, how to bring these capabilities to bear at scale. So I'm just going to go through 6 slides here. They're sort of high level, but I hope sort of insightful and interesting. And the first is about sort of just the promise of digital dentistry. So everything is going digital and getting digitized, or already has been digitized. And that's obviously great for a whole host of reasons, right? It's clean, it's organized, it's searchable, at least somewhat. It's easy to move around, all the benefits of having sort of digital data. It's far less clunky. But I would argue that it really hasn't met its full promise relative to what it could be doing. And you guys might recall this Reader's Digest article back from 1997. And by the way, when I say it hasn't met its full promise, I mean that fundamentally what we're trying to do in dentistry is increase the standard of care and the quality of care as much as possible. And it's not clear that digital dentistry enhanced that as much as it could have or should have. So in 1997, Reader's Digest, a reporter went around the United States for 4 months, went to 50 different practitioners, got 50 different sort of treatment recommendations, and they were wildly sort of everywhere across the board, and that caused a lot of stir. If we could jump to the next slide here, Bill. Here we have a study that was just performed a few weeks ago. This is led by an organization that we helped found that Amol is a part of called the Dental AI Council. This is a nonprofit organization focused on academically rigorous research into the intersection of AI and dentistry. And this is really similarly striking. So this is 136 practitioners asked to look at the same FMX set and both diagnose and treatment plan. And what you found was a whole mouth treatment cost that ranged from $300 to $36,000. Again, same FMX set. If you look into an individual tooth, in this case, tooth number 3, the caries sort of detection on the part of the practitioners was nearly a 50-50 split. You could see here to the right. If you look at sort of recurrent decay and the detection of recurrent decay, it was about a 60-40 split. And you could see just how fragmented the concurrence is around the diagnoses that occurred all across tooth 3. So this is obviously very troubling, and it's not clear that we've gotten dramatically better since 1997, during that period when everything has gotten digitized. And I think there's something wrong with this picture, because this sort of speaks to all the issues that we see in dentistry around sort of patient trust and consistency and quality of care. And this is really where, if we could jump to the next slide, Bill, this is really where AI comes in. And I truly believe that AI is going to have as profound an impact on the dental category as anything ever. I mean, as much as the toothbrush. And the reason for that is because we're sitting on mountains of data, but nobody's really taking advantage of that fact, right? So everything is digitized. It goes back 20 years, but so what? You're never looking at it. You're never searching. You have no way to do that. What AI is that missing cognitive layer that enables you to look at historical data, at data in real time, do diagnoses, identify tooth numbers, identify, endodontic opportunities, implant opportunities, existing restorations, do all of these things such that when you're interacting with the patient, you're able to bring all of that knowledge to bear, regardless of whether you're tired or hungry or distracted or anything else. You're able to bring all this knowledge to bear to enhance the treatment that you're going to be delivering to that individual. And if you do that every single day, over and over and over again, almost immediately, you see an enhancement in the quality of care that one is able to deliver. And if we jump to the next slide here, there's just a video. Oh, actually, we'll go over this first to give you a sense of the various ways in which AI is currently active in dentistry today. These are the things that we do, but I think it's largely representative. So we do work in the laboratory space around detecting the quality of preps at the level of the prep tooth and margin marking, and work in the insurance category around fraud, waste, and abuse detection, helping automate claims review, and a huge amount of work also with dental practices and group practices specifically. Is actually the most rapidly growing component of our business today. And we'll talk about what some of those capabilities look like. But it really is touching most sort of parts of the dental value chain in a fundamental way. And it's still early days, but it's all happening quite quickly. So if we could jump to that next slide, Bill. Here's just a video of a tool that we have called Second Opinion. So this is just the detection, not the analysis on top of the detections, but just to give you a visual sense of what this stuff looks like if you haven't seen it before. Pretty straightforward. What you find is in real time, within milliseconds, you're able to identify pathologies, whether that's bone loss at the millimeter level, margin discrepancies, periapical radiolucency, calculus, existing restorations, the list goes on and on. Incredibly accurate, incredibly fast, and totally on demand. I think we could jump on from here, Bill. And lastly, so we have a tool specifically for group practices and also increasingly for individual practices called Practice Intelligence. And I'm not going to step through all the bullets here. Suffice it to say, and I don't want to sound too sort of overly salesy, but essentially every single practice or group practice that has looked at these capabilities has converted into a relationship with Pearl. And then the reasons for that are fairly straightforward. One is we're fundamentally enhancing the quality of care that your practitioners are able to provide. These are assistive devices that make your practitioners better, make their jobs easier, reduce liability, reduce chair time immediately on day one. And also, on average, we're surfacing about $1 million in treatment opportunity for a given patient population. And this is at the office level, so per office. So if you're a 20 office DSO or a 500 office DSO, you're talking about tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in undetected opportunity that we were able to surface on day one. This is an inundation of care that you are able to deliver to patients. And there's a huge amount of additional benefits around sort of feedback loops and acquisitions and all these other things that the tool is able to support. But ultimately, elevating the standard of care, making your practitioners better, making their lives easier, and enhancing revenue opportunity. And again, this isn't just by sort of looking at the PMS and calling folks back in. This is fundamentally happening by virtue of looking at the records themselves in conjunction with PMS data and surfacing truly new opportunity. So we're hugely excited about the value that this is delivering. And I'd really encourage you guys to take a closer look because we do feel that this is also rapidly going to become par for the course.
Thanks, Ophir. I'm going to let Amol take over again here and talk a little bit about some of the things he touched on earlier. Why don't we talk a little bit about Hindsight and some of these other things that you were referencing, and I think what Ophir talked about really touched on this. So go ahead, Amol. Now you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to have external noises. But one of the things we talked about, and Ophir talked about this a lot, is about, how do you process information, historical information, information that you're gathering every single day, and then convert that into revenue at the end of the day, at the same time providing better patient outcomes. And that's really the power of AI. I sound like that IBM commercial, the power of AI. Like the guy comes out and says all these things, but Hindsight is like this happens in our practices all the time. I'm like, all right, well, how many implants did we place last month? 2. Wonderful, that's great. One of the things that when we go deeper into those things from the perspective of, okay, well, what happened, right? We realized that we're only booking 32% of those people who are calling to ask for implants. That's an insight that we would never had if we had not looked at that information. The receptionist who was answering the phone just doesn't know how to describe implants really well. And then another receptionist who talks about implants when people call with no insurance is that they're only mentions financing 38% of time. I mean, that's powerful insight, right? Understanding that the easy thing to say is we only had 2 implant placements last month. It's easy to say, oh, we need to spend more money on marketing, right? That's the easy answer for everything. Oh, we need more money on marketing. Let's spend more money on Google AdWords. But if we dig deeper, we realize that maybe 10 people called us last month who are looking for specific implants, or 12, and then we're only scheduling 2 of them. So we've got a big problem, big leak at the top of the funnel. That's a big insight. Then understanding an insight that, oh my God, we don't know how to even talk about dental implants. All we talk about is pricing. All we talk about is how much they cost and how we may need root canals and buildups and all that stuff. And then part of what we've seen across 5 million phone calls that we've analyzed is that we need to make sure 2 things happen when a patient calls us, new patient. one, they don't have the fear of coming in, the physical pain of coming into a dental office. They need to also make sure that they are also not fearful about the competence of our doctors or our team, but they also need to not be fearful of the cost. It's how much is it going to cost. If we don't alleviate that stuff, we're not going to get these people come in. And then at the now foresight means, what do we do? What action do we take based on the hindsight and the insight we've had? What action do we take? Do we train them how to discuss dental implants, whether it's patients with diabetes or high A1C levels or whatever that might be? Talk about that really well. Do we do that training? Do we also talk about how to offer financing appropriately during that time and make this about, this is going to cost you $6,000 versus $199 a month. And that's what results in action. So one of the things Patient Prism is able to do is able to really look at speed. I said speed earlier matters, right? We're able to look at this within 20 minutes, right? If you go to the next slide, Bill, we're able to look at this information. This is the underlying technology, by the way. Natural language processing is a field of AI that gives machines the ability to read, understand, and derive meaning from spoken language. And that's the underlying technology that we think of when we use Alexa or Siri or any of that. That's kind of a weak AI, but still, that's the technology that looks at language that's spoken and then converts that into information, insight, and eventually foresight. But at Patient Prism, really, we use NLP, we use natural language processing. And then we really analyze this conversation that happens with the patient at 9 o'clock in the morning. Analyzes it within 10 minutes. We analyze it, what the value of that opportunity was, what got said, what got missed, and then basically allow that patient, send that alert to a patient but the practice within 20 minutes so that they can actually say, okay, well, this patient called us, needed a dental implant. We forgot to mention financing. We should try to call them back and try to get them back on the second try. And all of a sudden, we are seeing across our landscape, 25 to 30% of those patients come back on the second try, as if AI has given us the magical power to have a second chance to make that first impression. Patient comes in. This is how we accelerate new patient growth, is we're driving, right? More marketing dollars are being spent to drive new patients into dental offices and DSOs nationwide. Dentistry has evolved into a direct-to-consumer model, a B2C model. It used to not be that, but now it has. Now our cost of acquisition, it's anywhere between $40 to $300 cost of acquisition of a customer. It almost costs $200 to get it all on 4 case. And if we don't do the right job in the first time, we want to be able to understand, oh my God, we can't lose this $40,000 opportunity that called in at 9 o'clock. We want to be able to immediately retrieve that. So that really is the power of AI. I'm going to stop. I mean, there's a lot we could talk about, but at the end of the day, this is how we send our alerts out. We use AI really and to really understand what went wrong and how we can fix it really, really quickly. That's the power of speed. That's the power of what Ophir does on his side, to be able to almost understand quickly and bring those people back, right? Make real dollars. I mean, we've made impact with DSOs and practices instantly, where they've gotten $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month in production as a direct result of understanding what went wrong and fixing it within 25 to 30 minutes. So that's pretty much how Patient Prism uses NLP, natural language processing, to understand what went wrong quickly and to be able to have that second chance to reconnect with that patient, bring them back in, and obviously reduce our CAC and make the PE guys very happy too in the process. That's a little joke, but thank you for letting me talk about this, and we're open to take questions.
Yep. So thanks, Ophir, and thanks, Amol, for that. We're going to start the panel discussion section of the webinar here. And like I mentioned before, there some of these questions for this discussion were actually fed to us by the attendees ahead of time. If you do have any questions, feel free to send them to us in either the chat or the question and answer section. You should be able to find that on Zoom. I think we're all pretty used to it by now. But this is something we always hear, like what AI is, right? And we'll talk a little bit about it. It's Alexa, it's Siri, at least when it comes to natural language processing. But what what is AI not? So why don't we, Ophir, maybe you can kind of take that topic.
Yeah, I'm glad to. I guess we could look at the two extremes, right? So one thing AI is not is, killer Terminator robots that are going to be sort of humanoid in nature and sort of take everyone's job and then murder them, right? So the sort of sci-fi notion or Hollywood notion of AI is something that we're extremely far away from. And the reason for that is a form of what one might call artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence. As a computer science sort of as a field is just nowhere near being able to achieve that, even if they wanted to, which, in many cases, people do want to achieve artificial general intelligence. What we're really good at increasingly, especially because of the advent of deep learning and neural networks, primarily since, coming back into fashion around 2009, 2010, because of the massive compute upgrades that occurred in that period, are something called artificial narrow intelligence. So these are the best, chess player in the world. But this same machine that could beat you at chess, can't have a conversation with you, can't make you a cup of coffee. And it's just very, very exceptional in that one domain, largely because of, again, deep learning and pattern recognition. On the other side of the spectrum, what I would say is another thing AI is not is software that is not built on AI. So what you see somewhat in dentistry, but really across all of Silicon Valley and all of software in general, is everyone now claims that they're an AI company because they read some book about AI. But really, at the end of the day, if you're not collecting large data sets and really sort of nourishing those data sets with a lot of labeling and TLC and feeding them into various models and refining those models and actually using a predictive sort of output of an AI system, then you're not an AI company, you don't have an AI product. So I think that term is thrown around very loosely, but really it's a very particular kind of expertise and effort. So those are the two ends of the spectrum.
Will you have anything to add to that?
I mean, Ophir said it right? It's the jargon of the times, right? Everybody's like, oh yeah, we're AI. AI is not statistics either. People think like, okay, well, AI is not pretty graphs, it's not software. It really is the ability to look at data that's really not as structured as we think it is. And I guess humans could look at it for a long period of time and figure out but no, one human is going to kind of look at this data and look at it over large swaths of data and come up with conclusions that are not necessarily like we saw in the study earlier, that humans inherently are going to be not objective because, we make decisions based on lots of different factors, including our own biases that we have. And AI kind of takes that out, right? It looks at data from a very scientific standpoint. It has no emotion, it has no preconditioning, it has no biases. The only bias is that it sees what it sees, and if it sees it, then it's true. If it doesn't, it's not. And it really is looking at that unstructured data and then converting that into something that is more palatable, that can improve whatever outcome that we're trying to improve.
So that's what AI is not. And we talked a little bit about what your AI is, or what Patient Prism's AI is, and what Pearl's AI is in dentistry. Beyond Alexa and beyond Siri, what else, and we'll let Ophir take us, what do we see in everyday life and how is it improving everyday life? So before we get into the application specifically in dentistry, what are you seeing now that has really made an impact outside of dentistry when it comes to AI?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, it's penetrated every industry in a significant way. I mean, obviously, things like content recommendations on Netflix or Alexa and Siri, like you mentioned, but also obviously self-driving cars are probably the most sort of notable, well-known example of true fundamental AI in action. But you have pretty much a massive component of all of ad targeting. You have things like surveillance, facial recognition. Again, technology is not inherently good or bad. It just sort of is. And it's about the application of it, right? You have massive applications in agriculture and crop dusting, and anywhere where there is sort of a sort of direct enough cognitive task that could be trained against, we're sort of seeing AI being implemented. So it's quite pervasive, as you know.
Well, you want to add anything to that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, as early as, one of the big things, Amazon made $100 billion on their recommendation engine last year, which means every time you search on Amazon, they usually suggest us that, hey, you may want to buy that. That's an AI, because no human being is sitting there and telling you, oh, if you bought Yuval Harari's book, maybe you might be interested in this one. But AI looks at the buying patterns of everybody and specifically and correlates millions of variables against millions of variables and presents to us a recommendation. That recommendation engine, drove $100 billion of sales for Amazon, which is 40% of their revenue. And that's huge, right? That's huge. And that's a very simple application of looking at patterns of what people do and correlating them with patterns that, it might be that if I'm interested in Good to Great, which is a book wrote by Jim Collins, I might be also interested in Malcolm Gladwell's books, right? And that's something that a human can't sit and say, oh my God, the relationship between these things, but AI will figure that out, right? Looking at relationships on almost an infinite level and come up with ideas and conclusions that you would never have humans being able to do that efficiently, at least to be able to deliver in real time. And that's the aspect of speed, which is so important.
Okay, so the topic of this webinar is AI in dentistry, right? And specifically in 2021. So maybe we could focus a little bit on, and it'd be really great to get both your perspectives on this. So how are things last year in 2020? So what was the temperature of the industry? Were they interested in AI? Was there some apprehension? And if there was, why? Is it fear? Is it cost? Is it they don't understand what it'll do? So maybe I'll let Ophir start with that one. What are you seeing now as far as the adoption in the industry with AI? And do we just continue to see that kind of continue on as people become—
Well, it's really quite remarkable. So back in 2015, we started our dental data collection effort, and that has obviously continued until today. And we weren't talking to many people about it at that point. Then 2018, we started to have conversations, and it was completely new information. 2019, we were still getting big, well-known people from big companies that we work with. They wouldn't even entertain this because they just didn't really believe that it was real. I think because of multiple false starts in with sort of AI promises historically. 2020, and I would say also later in 2019, you start to see a major adoption curve where everyone sort of has come to understand, okay, these capabilities do exist, they are accurate, they are cost efficient and cost effective, right? That's one of the issues with AI historically, is that it's just too expensive to make this stuff practical. And between then and now, I mean, you see all insurance carriers are implementing this on some level. Every OEM and PMS is aware of it. Every DSO, I think, on some level, sort of, aware of this and knowing that if they're not currently exploring it, they're going to be exploring it very soon. I've actually never, it's been remarkable to see. It went from basically zero awareness and adoption because there wasn't much out there. And I think, in large part, Pearl, some other entities have a lot to do with just creating a lot of this education and evangelization and market that has led us to where we are now, which is the entirety of the market seems completely on board, and it's just a matter of time. I really fundamentally believe that within the next 5 years, you're not going to really see an office, not only in the United States, but worldwide, that is not leveraging this capability in a very fundamental way. And for that reason, I also think dentistry is going to surpass every other form of medicine with its adoption. I don't know if we want to sort of go into that now or at all or not, but dentistry has very interesting dynamics about it that make it fundamentally different and better suited for AI adoption at scale.
Okay, Amol, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I completely agree with Ophir. We started our journey in 15. I mean, we spent 3 years kind of gathering the data, building the models, figuring out, can we make accurate predictions? And then 19 was the year where people started taking it, looking at seriously. 20, obviously, I don't know where 20 went, but maybe I'd like to forget about it. But I think there is a lot during 2020, as I said earlier, when I started the conversation, was that our industry really has taken the lead in all of healthcare to drive better business models. How do we serve more patients faster, better, maybe cheaper? How do we get more adoption of dentistry? How do we bring more people into the mix? Not only how many more patients, number one, to accept treatment that's been presented. That's been an age-old problem in dentistry of unscheduled treatment. That everybody's trying to solve it. I think AI has the potential to solve it finally using technologies like Pearl to be able to actually solve the unscheduled treatment problem. But absolutely, I think in the next 5 years, we will see massive adoption of AI on patient acquisition side, where we are on, that we're seeing AI on Google side and AdWords and all those things. But you'll see it in this. You will see it in presenting treatment as well. NLP will go into like okay, how do we help hygienists or dental assistants or doctors talk about treatment? I'll see some of those as virtual assistants come in. We may see a virtual receptionist that's completely AI driven, that can have basic conversations on the phone and talk about basic appointment setting. Like we saw that Sundar Pichai's Google email about a haircut appointment. I think we could see that in dentistry very, very easily. But I see this is the year where we've seen the most amount of interest. 2021, January and February, we've seen tremendous amount of interest, especially in the DSO industry, to say like, all right, well, we need to optimize our cost of customer acquisition. We need to optimize our LTV CAC ratios. We need to optimize how much we're spending and make the most of the journey of that patient. And I see an amazing future for not only AI, but for dentistry over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think it has major inroads with an advent of systemic health integration and all that stuff. And I think DSOs are going to drive a lot of that value into our country with those changes.
So you both touched on this with your mini presentations at the beginning. You talked about undetected opportunities, right? And I think Ophir said, which is a mind-blowing number, $1 million undetected per practice, which is, so I'd love to get some feedback from both of you. What are some of those undetected opportunities that you're finding for these DSOs at the practice level? And then there's a two-parter, so this could be, hopefully it's not the rest of the discussion, but the second part is, if I'm a DSO right now, an emerging group, and I'm interested in having a conversation with either one of you or both of you, what does it look like? Like, how do I get involved? I mean, what do I expect? So first off, undetected opportunities, and then we'll get to the what do I expect as far as the implementation process. So undetected opportunities, let Ophir start.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, just to sort of continue what I was saying before in relation to undetected opportunity, the reason AI is unique in the field of dentistry, at least one reason, is that dentists are not typically radiologists full-time. That's not their core sort of occupation. That is something that they need to do well in order to service their patients. But if you can make their lives easier and provide assistance in that regard, then all the better. It's not taking away any autonomy from a practitioner, but it is offering them sort of a helping hand. So from an undetected opportunity perspective, great question. Just to give you guys a few examples, endodontic opportunities, scaling and root planing. So, presence of calculus burrs, folks that are sort of on the wrong track, and where, for example, they should be on a perio track, but they're on a prophy track. So you might look for bone loss and other indicators around that. Implant, ortho, a whole host of others. So effectively what you're able to do is immediately review entire patient populations and surface all of these cases that have not been planned and have not been treated, right? So again, this is really critical. This is being cross-referenced with the PMS such that we don't want to provide sort of redundant information. It doesn't matter if there's a periapical lesion, if it's already been sort of planned or treated, right? What you want to do is actually find that spread where it actually was not detected for whatever reason, and now we have an opportunity to actually issue that treatment.
Amol?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so inspiring. I mean, I could listen to Ophir for a long time. It's so exciting. In our case, we look at undetected opportunities in terms of missed opportunities, right? Because we're having conversations with patients all day long. We're driving new patient volume to our call centers, to our dental offices. And these patients are looking to spend money with you and to get treatment done. And detecting those, right? And obviously, if we got a batting average of 50%, which means, we're spending $2,000 and we're only converting half those people, that's usually what's happening. 50 to 60% of these new callers are actually scheduling, and then the rest of them are just being driven away because somehow we don't know how to have that conversation that gives them the opportunity to schedule an appointment. So in our case, depending on the size of the practice, we can't say it's $1 million because that's not where we are, but we can say anywhere between 3 to 10 to 15 new patients, depending on the size of your office. And now we know the value of a patient could be varied, right? It could be a couple $100, could be $40,000, especially if you're a high-end practice, implant, ortho kind of practice, veneers, cosmetic stuff. The value of each patient is pretty high. The lifetime value keeps on rising every year. As we keep doing more and more things, the value of that patient rises. So really what we do is look at those opportunities that get missed and try to bring them back into our office so that we can make an impact. Average, we've seen anywhere between $250,000 to $400,000 of impact sometimes per office. Sometimes it's only $10,000, it's only $150,000, depending on what that practice does, what the value of the patient is. But capturing those opportunities that were missed because we didn't measure it. That's what NLP and Patient Prism does in making sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck for the dollars you've spent to attract that new patient, and making sure that that patient does come in and spend the dollars, gets great health and helps your P&L.
So talk to me a little bit about onboarding. People are interested. They want to take the next step. What does that look like? Is there some apprehension because it's AI, or what's my staff going to think? Those types of things I would guess could be some roadblocks. But Ophir, why don't you talk a little bit about, what is the new DSO that would come aboard? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we try to make it sort of provide a very prescriptive way to come on board with very clear steps. So, first of all, this is a huge amount of opportunity that is being surfaced. It's a huge amount of also process improvement if you're going to take full advantage of it. So there is an undertaking here where you're going to want to have a plan for how to deploy this to all your practices, specifically as it relates to practitioners and hygienists and everyone else is going to interact with it. You want to be able to sort of explain it and train it in a very clear way. So we're quite active in that onboarding effort. But typically the way that this step starts is you'll come on board. If you're a small DSO, we'll just bring the whole group on immediately and sort of get that training and education process underway. If it's a large group, oftentimes we'll start with a subset of practices, maybe 6 or 10. Sort of fully validate the opportunity and the upside in that small set of offices. But more importantly, because that happens very quickly, use this as an opportunity to sort of issue that training and those directives in those particular practices and use that as a model to then expand across the entire DSO. Because honestly, if you're going to take advantage of this tool, you want to reference it ideally with every patient in which you meet as part of your process, as part of your daily huddle. It's part of your review, and the value is there such that this is worthwhile. So it's worth making some of those process changes. Not necessary to do all those things, but certainly what we recommend. So we have a large library of training videos. We do live training with our in-house practitioners as well. So practitioner training, and are very involved with the DSOs and that education effort.
Thanks. Amol, what about your onboarding?
Part of onboarding is tough, right? And it's tough because we've got offices around the country that are busy, right? And they've got a lot going on in their lives. Now we've got another technology that comes in. Although it makes a lot of sense, and me and Ophir can talk about it till we're blue in our faces. At the end of the day, dentistry is a team sport, right? We've got to get our teams inspired. They got to get them motivated to understand the importance of what we're doing, why we're doing it. Once they understand the why. So our onboarding process is really understanding the practice, getting the office managers or in case call centers, getting the reps over there, really buying into the process of why that customer journey is important. We do lots of Zoom training. As you know, we've got Patient Prism Academy. We got over 1,200 videos of all kinds that, that we've developed over the years to kind of really help team members understand the soft skills, understand how to talk about dental conversations, understand. And one of the things we do, thanks to AI, is when something goes wrong, which means the patient decides not to schedule an appointment, that alert that goes out in 20 minutes is accompanied by training, which is like short Khan Academy type 1 to 2 minute training videos. So we're trying to train everybody in real time on things that go wrong. But at the same time, we're cognizant of the fact that dental offices are busy. There's a lot going on, and we got to make sure that they buy into the process. They understand why this is important, and really train them to become better communicators. There is this big brother watching kind of fear at the beginning, and we say we're not that. It's not big brother. It's coaching, right? Every position in a sports has a coach. And we're your front office coach. We want to make sure we understand, and we want to facilitate your greatness. So onboarding is an important step, but onboarding and customer success both come hand in hand. We want to make sure that they're using the data, and that information, insight, is actually converted into action. The action is that the patient reschedules or schedules an appointment, comes in, spends money with you guys. That's what we're concerned about. I'm not, the pretty graphs, we all have them, right? They look fantastic. At the end of the day, you want to see that patient. You want to generate the revenue from that. And we spend a lot of time onboarding and customer success is a critical part of success in getting this done.
Great. So we have about 10 minutes left, and I've got a couple of questions here. So we'll go through the questions, and then I think what we'll do is after that, I may have one last question for you guys to kind of end everything. But let's, so this one came up first. Do you have the capability to identify probing depth through AI? So that's for you, Ophir.
Yeah, for sure. So I should first say I'm not a dentist, but I believe the answer to that is no, because that's tissue and that doesn't actually appear in a radiograph. So anything that is impossible for a human to do potentially, that is just not visible in a radiograph, is also impossible for AI to do. We do pull probing depths from the PMS, but I don't believe that's possible to do via a computer vision approach.
Okay. So this one came through the chat, and I think this is more for, well, it could be for both of you, but how do you improve adoption and motivate long-term practitioners to get involved, to change, so that we can drive value for these tech avenues? So I guess that, a lot of that, okay, there's Amol. He's got a, what's it? You have an answer for that?
It's tough. And I would not, you know me, right? I'm not going to say that it's all easy, but it really, the tone has to be set at the top, right? What's important to us. The DSOs that are really doing well, as far as I'm concerned, around the country, and we work with some of the best ones out there. They really respect the journey of the patient, of where it starts and where it ends, right? And they make sure that every interaction with that patient is optimized to its fullest capacity, where the patient feels safe, patient feels that they have to call the right place, and they know it's affordable. So it's really, really important if we set that tone at the top, that patient journey matters, and we map that journey of the patient from beginning when they have a need, when they find you on the website, to all the way they complete treatment. And if we can, as leaders, we can of DSOs or dental offices, we can communicate that by doing so, by optimizing the journey of the patient, we're going to make sure that we obviously grow in revenues and our profits, and that's great, but we're going to also allow more patients to get the treatment that they deserve, and it's going to help everybody. And that, as long as that mindset exists at the top, and that communication is continuous and happens all the time, I think we're going to see adoption. It's not easy, but it's very doable, and we've been able to get people to buy into the process within a very short period of time, as long as they have there's a champion there that somebody says, all right, this is why. As long as we can communicate the why, we're good. If we just say do this, it's most likely not going to work.
Any feedback on that, Ophir?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, look, people get set in their ways, right? We all do. And if somebody offers you a way to improve by 12% or 20%, then are you going to change like your day-to-day mode of operation to capture that? In many cases, no. But if you're offering 100x improvement, or at least 10x, I mean, the opportunity and the sort of the ROI effectively is so monumental, and even a non-monetary ROI, right, is so monumental that I think that's going to spur people to change, because that's ultimately how technological change ends up manifesting. It's that you have these massive sort of leapfrogs and capabilities and improvements. That's why people are still using flip phones, and they learned how to use an iOS or an Android device. And I think education is a big part of this. I mean, the data is there. The study that I showed earlier from the Dental AI Council, which people, if they're curious about this, should get involved with and join up. We'd love to have you involved. Is available. Although that data, if you actually read that study, it's pretty dry academic stuff. So I think you need a way to sort of communicate these things in a way that is approachable and sort of easy to digest. But I think the winds of change here are an example of one where it's powerful enough such that it's not really going to ultimately be optional if you want to be competitive in the category, just because you're not servicing your patients optimally by not taking advantage of these capabilities ultimately, right? And that's not something that we should be doing. Plus, it, again, makes life generally sort of easier.
Couple of questions here tied around AI and payers and claims adjudication. So, and we actually had quite a few people who attendees that are from not just DSOs and emerging groups, but also insurance providers. So one question in particular, the claims pay rate, and how do you get closest to the 100%? And then also decreasing insurance fraud. So talk a little bit about that. And that looks like the main issue there, the main question from Dr. Rowe.
You want me to take that, Amol? Do you want to take a stab?
No, this is you. This is all you.
Okay. Yeah. So look, I mean, there's a lot of conversation around this thing called resubmission fraud that turns out to be a very pervasive form of fraud in the category. I'll be not humble and say that as far as we're aware, Pearl actually detected and exposed that form of fraud, and is written about in the Wall Street Journal in, I believe, January of 2019. And I think we've been fairly instrumental in sort of bringing that to light and correcting that behavior. So we're obviously very close to that particular form of fraud and capability and issue it at large scale. But I'll also say that, there are other forms of fraud, waste, and abuse detection where you're looking at frequency analysis or big data analysis or the text of the claim that are also quite effective. In many cases, not quite as cut and dry, but quite effective, that we don't engage with, Pearl specifically, but the other companies do, where they're seeing a lot of success. So really, you want to cobble together all these different capabilities to develop the most comprehensive solution. There's not really a one size fits all or one product that's going to solve all these different needs. And from a claims review perspective, this is something that is happening very rapidly. and sort of automation and expediting claims review. But the holy grail here, really for everyone, for practices and carriers, is real-time adjudication. That is a very rare instance of an example of something that everybody equally really wants in the industry, right? You don't always find alignment on both sides, but here you really do. And that will become a reality with AI. If you have a third-party system that is able to, that is trusted by both sides, that is totally transparent and contextual, that you can always reference, that is able to review these claims and issue some sort of decision. Certainly the patient benefits, the doctor benefits, the payer benefits, and that is, I think, a pretty remarkable achievement if we're able to get there.
Excellent. So just had another question come in, and then I'll ask Amol this question, and then Ophir, if you want to take this as well, and then we'll be able to end things. And I just want to say thanks everybody for being here. We will have a recording of this available. We'll do a little editing, so it may not be out tomorrow, but we'll definitely have it really shortly, and it'll be on the Group Dentistry Now .com website. So we'll make sure we have that available. And then, you've got the emails here for Ophir and Amol. If you want to reach out to them directly, you can certainly reach out to me and I can put you in touch with them as well. There is a question, and I forgot to mention this group of people that were attending as well. We had a lot of people, professors, dentists from some of the dental schools. So here's a question, and Amol, if you want to take this one. Thoughts about dental schools considering touching on AI as part of their curriculum. They are the future after all. So are you working with any dental schools right now? What are your thoughts there?
I could take that quickly just because it's a very active area for us. So we work, specifically some of the ones that we're more public about, working with UCLA, working with BU, working with UPenn, some of the leading dental schools on a variety of opportunities, some of which are core sort of area of just research focus for the Dental AI Council. But we also have a set of explicit educational tools for dental students that makes them more proficient at reading radiographs. It's an education suite that is quite fun and powerful, that is being distributed in various universities, currently in sort of a beta mode, but rapidly getting to a full production mode. And we also have various universities installing our software in their operatories so that the students are able to engage with the AI detections in these environments. And the reason that's important is not only because of all the benefits that we know accrue from leveraging this capability that we've covered, but also because you're providing this very active feedback loop to these students and to their professors such that they're able to identify areas of improvement. So absolutely believe that it's critical that universities engage with this technology and become fluent with it, because they're going to be stepping into a world where it's prevalent. And also, I've long believed that this is an incredibly powerful learning tool. If you speak to the dean of any sort of school of dentistry or maxillofacial group, what they'll say is nobody is getting into the market that is good enough at, say, caries detection. Like everyone is starting from a deficit. And I think that we could definitely do better by virtue of leveraging these teaching tools.
Great. Well, anything you'd like to add there?
No, I mean, that's we think education in terms of, I think dental schools need to provide business education to students coming out and understanding how all of the business of dentistry works. And I think there's a lot of effort among schools to provide that. And there's lots of organizations now that provide it as well after that. But part of what we look at Patient Prism is that we look at patient acquisition, and that's changing. And the demographics of our country are changing. The patterns of how people find dentists are changing. And I think having that education as you graduate in dental schools is going to be critical for you to whether you want to be independent practice, you want to be DSO, whatever that is. I think you need to understand how the trends that are shaping the industry from a marketing standpoint, from sales standpoint, as well as, taking advantage of the technologies that will come about that could revolutionize. For example, I mean, I think AI's application for no-shows is somebody needs to do that, right? And I presented it a few years ago. I think that's going to be something that's important. But from a school standpoint, I think the business education, I feel, is important, and I think all of healthcare needs that, and it only helps us build better practices.
I know we're past the top of the hour. I have one last question. It's going to be tough to keep really, really short because it's get your crystal balls out. What does the future of AI and dentistry look like, say, 5 years out? So you got to do, Amol, you can do that in under 1 minute, and then Ophir, you've got a minute, and then we're going to end everything.
Well, I do see, as I said earlier, virtual receptionists being able to talk to patients and do basic appointment-related tasks. I do see assistants that could potentially assist in operatories in terms of presenting cases and helping them that. I could see them listening to the conversations and coming up with better ways to specifically improve certain people in terms of standardizing the best practices. I do see a lot of that happening from NLP standpoint of like digesting the data, analyzing it almost in real time, and providing recommendations in real time that could improve patient outcomes and practice outcomes at the end of the day. I definitely see that in the next 5 years.
Excellent. Ophir?
I'll just keep it really simple. I think it'll be totally ubiquitous. I don't think you will have a practice that you walk into where you capture your x-rays and you're not immediately in real time seeing the detections show up. Carriers before 5 years, way before, are going to be largely reliant on these capabilities for their FWA and needs, penetrating laboratories, and obviously, like we talked about, group practices, it's very, very actively happening today. So I just think that it's going to be, it won't even be a question. It wouldn't be a question that anybody's going to be asking explicitly in a few years' time, because it's going to be so clearly, pervasive throughout the category.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Ophir. So, and Amol as well. I appreciate you guys sticking around, and we still have a good number of people that stuck with us longer than an hour, which is tough to do. So you guys were obviously engaging. Thanks everybody for listening to the DSO Study Club. This is Group Dentistry Now. I'm Bill Neumann. And again, Amol, Ophir, thank you. If you need any other information, have their email addresses here, or you can reach out to us and we'll put you in touch with them. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.